How's it going, guys? It's Hobby from Snowstorms. Today is November 19th, 2020. And today, as you probably saw in the title of the video, we're going to be tracking this potentially major snowstorm that could happen going into Thanksgiving around 5 days from now. So let's get right into it by first looking at the GFS model, where you see that around 120 hours from now, if you don't know, that's 5 days from now, you see that there's this large swath of snow pretty much impacting all of northern Minnesota, all of northern Wisconsin, and even toward extending down almost towards Detroit, Michigan. So you see that this is a fairly this will grow into a fairly large snowstorm, and as you can see, you begin to see the darker blues as well. So there is that potential that we will see a major snowstorm happen somewhere around the Great Lakes and northern Midwest region. But like I keep saying multiple times, it's still 5 days out. A lot could change, especially when both of the computer models, GFS and European, are disagreeing in some instances of where this is gonna go. So to show you how this storm will exactly form, you see that 78 hours from now, for the most part, it'll be a quiet week. We may see a little bit of snow in the higher elevations of the Northeast, such as the Adirondacks, the White Mountains, and the higher elevations of the Appalachian Mountain Range. However, for the most part, it should be light, so it isn't anything major to worry about. And by the way, we'll get into this snowstorm more in depth in a little bit, but it should be quiet for the most part, thanks to the jet stream straightening out through the United States, which is keeping the cold temperatures and the warm temperatures from really mixing to create a ton of instability. And instability is really the key ingredient to create a lot of these snowstorms and these rainstorms in general during the winter months, during the fall and winter months. So it should be a mainly quiet week. However, both the GFS and the European are expecting a trough to move from Alberta, Canada, down through the Rocky Mountains, which is typical for the winter. And then, as you can see, as it continues to move down, you see that it I wouldn't say rapidly intensifies, but it gradually intensifies to the point where this storm, originally not packing a ton of moisture with it, is now packing far more moisture, and it's affecting far more people. As you can see, the rain extends as far south as Texas, and the snow extends as far north as Canada. So this is expected to be a fairly large swath of snow that will impact millions of people throughout the northern Great Lakes and southern Canada for the most part. And you can see, going forward, I don't like to go 5 days from now, but you can see it also affects eastern Canada as well eventually, and then brings a large swath of rain to the southeast. So there's a lot of questions with this we had to answer, and we'll see the factors that will determine what type of track this storm will take, and how big this will be, and if you'll see snow at all in the northern Great Lakes, because that's still a question going into Thanksgiving. We aren't entirely sure there will be any accumulating snowfall in the Great Lakes going 5 days from now, because a lot could still change. I do expect it more likely to snow than not, but there's still that possibility no accumulating snow happens at all. So definitely keep in mind. So what factors could change the potential forecast? Well, for one thing is that I noticed that the European model is moving this trough coming from Alberta, Canada, a lot slower than the GFS model. And the reason is that the European is thinking that there's going to be less instability, there's going to be less unstable air near the jet stream, which means that the jet stream will be weaker. The lower level winds as well as the upper level winds will be weaker when there's less unstable air, or like I like to call it, less of a contrast between warm air and cold air, because in weather, cold air is much more denser than warm air. So the cold air, if it moves further south, it's going to try to move more southward to fill in that that less dense and warmer air, and as it does it, it creates stronger winds, and that's what intensifies the jet stream when we see the much more denser cold air attempt to move into the warmer air. And the European isn't really favoring of bringing as much cold air further south, because as you can see in this run, this 120 hours from now, you see that the European is taking this low pressure system towards the southeastern portion of Colorado and pretty much right around the southern Midwest region. However, if we take a look at the GFS in comparison, you see that 120 hours from now, the low pressure is already up north towards Minnesota. So you see that the European is favoring that this will move a lot slower than the GFS. And you might be asking what that means. Well, for one thing, is that what that means is that the jet stream will be weaker, which means that as a result, the storm will most likely be weaker because when the storm is moving slow during the winter, it's more likely the cause of that there isn't a ton of instability or there isn't like a strong jet stream that's pushing the storm along with the westerly winds. And so what that pretty much means is that the European there isn't a lot of instability with this low pressure system in the European model, which means that all in all, this would be a weaker storm in this scenario, since there isn't as much convection as a result of the lack of instability that would create the heavier rains and the heavier snows. And I would say it also decreases the chances of the upper Great Lakes experiencing snow, because when there's less instability, the cold air moves. The cold air is stays further up north, and if it stays further up north enough, that means that it's possible the upper Great Lakes will experience no snow from this. Because take a look at this. The European at this point, 144 hours from now, you see that the light blues are all the way in the upper in Canada, and you see that by the way, the blues mean colder temperatures usually. This is geopotential height, which pretty much means that since the air, which pretty much means that is measuring the altitude where the pressure is 500 millibars. And usually when the altitude is higher, that means that it's a lot warmer in those regions, because warm air rises and it rises further up into the atmosphere before dispersing. However, when the air is a lot colder, the air is more dense, and as a result, there's less height with it. So the lighter blues represent a shorter height, where the millibar pressure is at 500 millibars, and as a result, it means colder air. So you see the colder airs are staying far up north in the European model, while in the GFS model, you see that the blues dip down all the way towards the northern portion of the Great Lakes region and the extreme southern portions of Canada, and you see that there's a stronger storm as well, with the storm going as far down as 995 millibars. And that means during this scenario, you're more likely to experience far more snow in the upper Great Lakes region, and a more powerful storm with maybe some stronger, gustier winds coming off the Great Lakes region. So that's definitely something we have to watch, is how much cold air will be there going into, I would say maybe behind this trough as it enters from the Northwest United States. We have to see how much cold air, because that'll make a huge difference in what type of storm you'll see in the upper Great Lakes region. Will you experience a stronger snowstorm with stronger winds and heavier rain throughout the US? Or will you experience mainly a much weaker snowstorm that moves slower through the United States and doesn't produce much anything major? We have to wait and see. The European model is known to be the slightly more reliable model, but for the most part, they're fairly even in terms of reliability. So we have to definitely take each forecast with a grain of salt, especially since they're disagreeing for the most part. However, what I could say for certain is that we will see a low pressure system move through the United States. We will see snow in the higher elevations of the Northwest. as it moves through the northwest United States. And we will see rain throughout the United States, and maybe some snow in the upper Great Lakes region. However, there's still a lot of questions whether you'll experience accumulating snowfall at all in the upper Great Lakes, and how much and how powerful this storm will be. And it all really depends on how far south this cold air goes and is behind it. So we have to just wait and see during this scenario. However, if we take a look at the GFS, if we take a look at the forecasted snowfall that's expected from the GFS model, let's say the GFS model was spot on with its forecast, which will be unlikely. It's possible that it could be close to this amount, but to be spot on, that's nearly impossible. But if the GFS scenario is right, you see that we see 7 inches up to 8 inches in the middle portion of Wisconsin. And keep in mind that the GFS is forecasting the snowfall assuming that 1 inch of rain equates to 10 inches of snow. While for the most part 1 inch of rain would equate to 10 inches of snow, there are some times where it doesn't because of temperature differences, and sometimes and especially when the surface temperature hovers around freezing, around 32 degrees, it becomes harder to assume how much snow you'll receive, because it's uncertain how much liquid is within per snowflake. So I think it's possible that it will be less than that, because that the snowfall will be less than forecast from the GFS, because this storm, as you can see, if the GFS model was correct, it's expecting the snow to eventually change over to rain as the low pressure moves north as a result of a ridge that's going to build over the eastern United States. So it's possible that it is lower than the GFS snowfall because of that. And also, since we're in the month of November, the ground temperature is still relatively warm for the winter. So I'm assuming that the GFS is measuring this just off of snow that comes from the sky, and not really the accumulating snowfall that will hit the ground and accumulate, and disregards the temperature of the ground. So it could be lower than that if it's measuring it on that basis. However, you see that even if it's slightly lower, it still could be a pretty significant snowfall threat for the Great Lakes region, since you could experience up to 8 inches of snow if the GFS model is correct. But we have to wait and see over the next several days, because it could be even stronger if there's more instability this could work with. However, it could be weaker to the point where you might not experience much of accumulating snowfall at all in the upper Great Lakes. So just keep in mind with your local forecast, and we have to keep in mind of that trough and how much cold air will it bring behind it, because that instability will be the key to how much snow you'll receive in the Great Lakes region. So now for the near future forecast, you see that for the most part, like I said earlier during the video, it's mostly quiet in the US for this week, since the jet stream has straightened out, keeping the temperatures at bay and where they should be. Not a lot of instability to create storms. We do have some snow in the higher elevations of Montana, and it's good. And you could experience up to a foot in the higher elevations, as I'll show you in the total accumulated snowfall. Assuming that 1 inch of rain equates to 10 inches of snow. You see that moving forward, you see that snowpack increases to potentially almost towards 2 to 3 feet in the very high elevations of the Cascade Mountains, and we could see up to a foot maybe in the Rocky Mountains of Idaho and Montana. So it could be a good snow weekend or ski weekend for you guys going into Thanksgiving, which will definitely be good for the skiers in the upper northwest Pacific. So moving forward, you see that that there's a little bit of snow. However, for the most part, is minor. However, in terms of 3 days from now, there is a possibility you will experience more snow in the higher elevations of the Northeast, because if we take a look at the GFS's future radar, there's going to be a ridge that's going to dip down from Canada, bringing a more northerly wind component that will bring some unstable air over around the Ohio River Valley, and that will increase the chances of rain, and that will create a swath of rain moving through the Ohio River Valley. And then going 78 hours from now, you see the snow in the higher elevations in the Adirondacks and the upper portions of the Northeast. And then behind it, there's that possibility of some lake effect snow that could affect upstate New York and maybe southern Pennsylvania as well. I mean, northern Pennsylvania as well. So this won't be anything major. For the most part, it's going to be too warm for any major Northeast cities, or pretty much most of the Northeast, to experience any type of snowfall. This will mainly be a threat for the higher elevation mountain ranges. And according to the GFS model forecast, again, assuming that 1 inch of snow equates to 10 inches 1 inch of rain equates to 10 inches of snow, you see that for the most part 2 to 4 inches are expected in the higher elevations. And again, it could be lower, since the GFS likely doesn't regard the surface temperature during this time, and the surface temperature in November is still relatively warm for the winter. So it could be less than that, maybe more likely 1 to 3 inches in the higher elevation. So nothing major, nothing that the skiers should be too excited about, I would say, since it isn't a ton of snow. So, but however, it's still something to keep in mind if you live around these regions going around 3 to 4 days from now. So anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more content, and make sure to like if you like this video. And I hope you guys have a good day, good night, and whenever you're watching this, I hope you guys have a good one.